In this segment, we will take the wood strips we weathered in the previous segment, assemble them onto the walls templates, and can put them together to create the shell of the shack. Add some details, including the hinges and signs, as we continue building the Dueling Shacks by Sierra West. I have taken the boards here and stained them a little more. Got some gray and a little darker black I wanted. Again, I was going from these pictures to try to make it match. So I wanted that gray you see there. Yeah. Also here, I used some wash for some of it. MIG. This happens to be a MIG black wash. That worked really well for the dark spots here and these boards. I wasn't getting enough gray, so I went with a Tamiya, what they call panel accent line color. Dark gray I chose, but it's basically a very thin wash, enamel based, and that did really well for these gray pieces here. Then I stuck them to this board on an upside down piece of masking tape. That way I can keep the right side up that I like. The other side is not the same on all of these, and not quite the way I like to see it on all of them. So now I don't have to keep them check every time I pick one up. So I'll leave that nearby, and I'll take from that to build on this. Now this is the cardboard template that comes with the kit, and we've got all the walls and the roof. What we're going to see is that he's made some really nice guides to assist in some of the assembly. But first thing we need to do is take out these doors, because we don't need them for the sides, but they also come in handy in the future, because we will build the doors on these when we get to that point. So they're serve dual purpose. We're just going to cut these out. He suggests that you also sand these edges or buff up these edges just to make sure they're perfectly square and there's no ragged leftovers like you can see here. Okay, so I'll just take a little file sandpaper I've got, and we'll clean those up. The kit also comes with these strips, and the only purpose of them is to be used as guides when you're building these sides, which is great. So you don't have to provide one for yourself. And the purpose of it is to find the edge, the left and right edge of each of the walls, up against which we will butt the siding. And so he's put a line here to tell you right where that needs to go, and we're supposed to spot glue it just to the left of that line, so the line is still revealed. So we will do that really quick. Right down on, let that line stay visible. Okay, there we go. All right, now I'm going to take one of our strips, bring that over here, and it's going to let it overlap top and bottom a little bit for the first one, and we're going to butt it right up against this. Here you can see how one side of the strip is different than the other. This is lighter and that's darker. So I wanted this side. I'm going to leave a little overlap on each end and then cut it off there. Okay, and then he suggests we spot glue this down, of course, right only on the wall. Be sure not to get it on this gap between the strip wood and the wall. That gap, why is he doing that gap? That's a great idea. He's thought well ahead. If, for instance, these are our two finished walls, let's say, and if we covered the strip wood right up to the edge, like that, right, on each of them, and then put them together, we either have this kind of situation where there's a gap at the corner, or overlap them like this, and then we would have this edge exposed, right? So what he's doing is creating, this is the way we want to put them. Actually he's going to do it this way. That gap that overlap is going to cover that edge of the sides, the narrow sides. So when we get to the narrow sides, there will be no overlap over the edge, but here there is. Hopefully that'll become obvious once we put the two sides together. So I'm going to just put down a little bit of glue. And a tip I learned from someone else is to, when you want small amounts of glue, put some on a piece of plastic. I also use this tool to apply it when you need to do small applications. This is just an old dowel. Drilled a hole in the end and put in a needle. So there's a bit of the eye of the needle is here, which holds a little glue. And dip it in the glue, touch it on in a couple spots. We have 3 little dots, and then we can put that piece down, hold it for a couple seconds, okay? And that should attach our first piece. All right, so then wants to take another piece, but this time we're not going to make it full length, and that's what these guides are for. So we're going to take a piece. I'll get one of a different color shading, so it looks obviously different, like maybe this. Okay, and we're just going to glue it right up to that line, and then the next one we can take a piece from here to the bottom. We alternate that from down to this line, one that's full length, and so on, so that it's random. And that is perfect because that matches just the way we saw it in real life. See how these only come a third of the way down, and then longer pieces down here. In fact, there's even more down here because they couldn't always, of course, get pieces that were long enough the full length of the building. So these are cut off right here, for instance. That also gives us an opportunity to make it look a little more realistic. We can either make a perfect cut here, or we can make it a little ragged, like we saw in one of those pictures, where the ends of the boards would be coming apart a little bit as they age, which I like. But another good tip in the instructions is, this one we will cut off straight, so we can show you that example. Okay, is don't leave the ends that you've just made, this end cut, untouched, because now it's a little light color and the surface that we're going to expose is not. So make sure you get a little of your dust or powder and brush and maybe some the rubbing alcohol. I'm going to touch it with a little rubbing alcohol and then a little of the powder that matches, and make sure it's got a edge that matches the front side we're going to expose. Okay, so I'll measure this, cut that here, and then we'll tack it on. There we go, there's the one that's been colored. So I'll put that down there. Doesn't have to be exact, of course, as these are just guidelines to give you an idea of how to, reminders to make it random. All right, we can take another one. Okay, for this one I'm going to put here, right? And that edge looks like it's already stained, so I will just cut this off and then apply some glue. Okay, there we go. So I will continue in that fashion and until we get to the next point where we are going to get some suggestions to do things a little differently than you might expect. Okay, so I have put on some strips here, and what they suggest is go up to about halfway. So I made a mark here that was about halfway and went that far, and then switch the guide piece of scrap wood over to this side, again leaving that edge, that mark that they make on the board visible, so there's a appropriate overlap again from here to the wall, and then start adding the strips back, moving from my right to left now. And when we get to the middle, there will no doubt be a gap narrower than a single strip, but I'll just cut one down to fit and fill that gap. And the reason for this is to be sure that there isn't some real narrow piece overlap that you left to overlap here, then it wouldn't be able to be glued to this wall. So now when we do it, start here, we're sure we have room to glue it to this wall, and then we can fill in the gaps. All right, so we will continue with that. You can see I have finished putting the wood on the walls the way they described, and up here I didn't use one piece of wood from top to bottom so that it looks more natural. Otherwise it would probably be obvious that this piece of wood is also the extension of this piece of wood. So that's a good piece of advice in the instructions. So just use separate pieces on top and bottom of the window, and then all around it, and then this edge of the wood goes right to the edge of the cutout, as opposed to over here where it overlapped, again because of that gap issue at the corner we talked about. So the next step, cut them out of here, out of the templates. Just careful not to go too far. I think there isn't much holding these in. Okay, so what we have is obviously some overhanging wood we need to cut off, right? So they have a good idea and suggestion on how to do that. I'll show you what they said. So we'll put that aside for now, but use the piece of strip wood they gave you, If you take that and butt it up against the edge of the cardboard, right? Not the wood, but the cardboard, then you know you're right along the edge where you want to cut. Then take your straight edge that you're going to use to cut off the wood and butt that up against the strip wood. Now you know you're right on that line. And I can cut this off. Several light passes. No need to make it all happen at once. Light passes will help ensure that you keep a straight line. And so there you can see now we've made a good edge on the top. Now don't get carried away and going too fast and take these edges off the sides. That on the front and the back, those are the gap fillers. So the only thing we want to do on this one additionally is take the bottom off. That's a nice trick. It gets it. Don't have to line it up with your eyes, and you know you're right on the edge. Okay. That it? No. Guess that's it. So there we have a nice square top and bottom. Starting to look like a wall. So I will do that with the other sides, and the same with the window. Cut out the window from the inside, so that's clear. They also give you some windows and doors, and at the very beginning they had you spray paint matte finish on just one side of them, and this is the unpainted side. This is the unmatte finished side, and you need to keep that straight, so I just put pencil marks on all of the window pieces here that we're about to work on the back side, because we're about to use some chalk powder to color the top side so they look like this. Okay, so need to cut them out, of course, of the sheet. Just do one here. Show you how it works. Not much holding them in the template. So pull those out. Now I know this is the side I do not care about putting the chalk on. I'm going to do it on this side. And one thing you want to remember, that another good suggestion is the edges of the window. Now we're going to do the front surface, but there are the edges, outside edges, and don't forget the inside edges, that if we don't color in the same color, it will stand out. So I suggest using some rubbing alcohol, very lightly, not much, and getting the edge wet. I have some powder here from before, so I'm just gonna dab that in there and probably take care of that edge. Okay, now they said be careful not to use too much or it will not stick, not adhere. So actually they said scrape on some of the chalk color you want first. Now I'm going to try a combination of a couple colors here. Alright, and then with a brush, dab, I'm dipping it in rubbing alcohol here, dab on the window. Don't make brush strokes because you don't want to see the brush strokes. All I'm doing is dabbing. Maybe I'll pick up some more of the chalk dust here and apply it. So this is going to look random because of the dabbing. We don't Don't want to do any brush strokes like you said. So, do this on the top side, or the out surface that faces out. And now it'll be obvious, I think. You can see that the edges are still white. I don't know if you can see that, but we're gonna need to do something about that. So more dampening the edges and then getting some of the powder on there. Okay, and don't forget to do this way too. Then you don't have to worry about checking when you install the windows that the correct side is up, because if you're like me, you'll get in a rush, or it'll be a week later and you'll forget that the one side is correct up and the other side is down, and you just put them in wrong. So, alright, now we've got two we can work with. If you want, you can scrape on some more powder just before the alcohol dries, but I'm going to continue that with each of these window pieces, and then we will glue some clear acetate into the windows and assemble them. So I have weathered all the exterior of the windows. These are on the good side, the side that will face out. Here's two of the good sides. They will go on top of these, which is the inside. All right. And then there's some acetate windows. What we did, same time we sprayed the window frames with the matte finish, they also suggested we spray the one side of these windows so that they're a bit foggy. Old shack, weathered, probably isn't going to have clear windows, so they wanted you to spray them with matte, and that's a good idea, but there's a good side that's protected by this paper underneath there. And what we're going to do is cut these out, put them one on top of the double hung part, and then another one here, and then we will glue the good sides on top of that. And we want so first we'll cut those out while I'm talking about it. And what we're going to do is try not to, which I probably already did, although this is the matte side, we want to try not to touch them with your fingers so you don't leave a fingerprint. And since that's the matte side, let's see now where that paper is. We want the good side out, the unmatte finish side facing out. So that's this side here. I'm going to put that down. Alright, so first I'm going to get a little bit of glue. Be careful not to use too much so it doesn't show up, and if you want, you might not want to use CA glue like I just did. Some other white glue types of glue will dry clear in case there's any kind of overlap or spillage of this glue onto the plastic. But then again, this is luckily going to be an old shack, and there might be, you could call that damage, what the heck. But so I'm going to take this off. Let's get some more tweezers here. Put that side down right there. Alright, that looks like it's within the frame. Make sure it's not overlapping. I think we're good there. Yep. Okay. And then we're going to take and glue more
so that we can put this inside of the window on top of it. Okay, there we go. Let's make sure they're lined up. That looks pretty good. Okay. I'm gonna actually set that down. I'm gonna put a little weight on it. Just do something like this. Make sure that stays, and I'll do the same thing with the rest of these. Another good idea they suggest is if you want to make cracks or scratches in the window beforehand, well, the best time to do it is beforehand. So I've got these little scissors here. I'm going to cut a corner out of this window and make it look like it's been broken. I don't know if you can see that, but okay. And then you could also scratch it up. Take a knife and just make some cuts in it as if they're scratches. Broke away from there. Okay, so that adds a little more realism to it as well. So I'll take this paper off and glue it on there. So I have assembled all the windows and also took the window frames that are going to be bordering the window on the outside out of the template and weathered those. So I test fit them in the holes, and they looks like they fit pretty well. So take that out and just use some wood glue. Now that we're gluing wood to the cardboard, don't need necessarily super glue, but that would work as well. I'm going to take a little applicator here and put some glue on the inside. And we want these flush with this outside surface, so that's what I'm looking for here. Now I want to be sure that the glossy side of the glass is up. I'm going to put that in there until it's flush with the surface, and there's one of the windows. Okay. Then we will take one of the frames and glue that on the outside. Luckily the wood glue gives you a little open time, as they call it, before it dries. Doesn't dry real quickly, so you can reposition it if you need to. But already, hopefully you can see that's looking pretty realistic. We've got depth because it's not all on the same plane there. Okay, and now I can take this guy and actually I think I want this one, because I cracked that one. You can see I cut the corner out of that one. I don't know if you can see that. But let's see which side's out here. This side. So, and I don't want to put it completely on the bottom. I want it to look like it's, you know, the window's partially open. So I'll only put it right about third of the way up. Okay, and now we're getting a finished look. And if you want to make some window shades inside, take a piece of paper, just simple regular paper, and maybe scrape on some chalk for make it look like it's an old, worn. And you can weather this whatever, however you like. All we're doing here is making a window shade. And what you can do is just put that behind this glass. Glue it on the back like that. And you'll end up with a window shade, okay? So that's another option. I'm not sure I want to do those shades, but that's a good way to do it. You can hopefully see the windows completed. See some cracks and the hole in this corner there, and see the glare on the, so we've got the right side facing out, and hopefully that'll make for some good looking sides on our dueling shacks. To finish the doors, they provide hinges. You can see them better from this side, the strap hinges in a laser cut out of this cardstock. And I mentioned the doorknobs, which we put on the other door. We'll also get to these horseshoes. Look at all those horseshoes, really small, but that'll add a nice little touch. I've already gone ahead and weathered all these. The horseshoes wanted to look a little darker rust, and the hinges a little oranger rust. But just another reminder that you can't and shouldn't just rust or weather the top side of these details. See, that edge is yellow. When we place that on the door, we would see that. So we want to be sure we cover all of those with a weathering, however you weather it. I use chalks again on this. So I will cut these out and weather the edges, and then we'll apply them evenly to the doors and build a frame around it. I have cut out the hinges and weathered the edges. So next thing I did was I put down this piece of tape and measured the places and marked off the places I want to put these hinges so they're evenly spaced, both in the height of the door and from one door to the next. So when I'm done with this side, I'll just move this tape over here. So we put one hinge down. You can see the rust color stands out well against the wood. Little glue on the hinge, and just place it like this. If it was crooked on an old shed, it might not look bad either. That's it. I also took out a couple horseshoes somewhere here. Oh, they're drying over here. And we will put those on the frame of the door. Well, another added detail. All those details will make it look much better. The casual viewer might not know why your model looks so good, but those details will be a big reason for it. So we'll move this, line up top and bottom edges there, and now I know where to put these. All right. Now we also want some door handles. So I'm going to just take a scrap piece of the strip wood here and cut some small handles. Actually, what I'll do is, we'll stain them later. I want to stain them darker, but I'll wait till I cut it, because after I cut, I will have some bare edges that will need to be stained as well. So just make a strip with two smaller strips, and we'll call those handles, okay? So get some, I'm going to take some wash, so I want them to be good and dark, and we'll just, in fact, we will dip them and then dry them. Okay, we'll come back to those. And now we will put a frame around the doors. The magical strip wood that he gives you comes in handy again. Put the strip wood against the top edge of the doors, and then you can use that as a guide. I've chosen this piece of wood. We'll put this side on and cut it to length and glue it. Do the same with another side here. Touch the top of the scrap strip wood and the backs of the hinges. Now we know they are exactly lined up with the top, and we can add a header piece that will rest on top of them. And what we need to cut to length, going to overlap the edges of these other boards a little bit, side trim boards. But then I want to touch up these edges again, because they're going to be bare edges that are unstained, right? Get a small brush and just give them a light little touch up. And now that's ready. Okay. We have some doors. We can also apply these a horseshoe here and there. Every good shed needs a lucky horseshoe, and dab it in right over the top. How about that? Now someone's probably going to tell me that should be the other way around, hanging upside down. I think I've usually seen them like that. We're going to go with that. There are also some great signs that he gives you printed out. All kinds of signs you can pick from, way more than you need, including vintage paint can labels and vintage license plates, vintage tin can labels, so you could make dowels, cut small pieces of dowels maybe to make paint cans or tin cans and wrap them. There's newspapers, but I'm going to also take a sign or two of these and put them on the wall. We'll see that in a minute. But also we have these door handles we made, so let's install those. Here we go. In fact, maybe that's too high. Now we're getting somewhere. All right. Signs. I like, please keep out. I'm gonna cut that out like this. And believe it or not, as thin as this paper is, we will still see the edges if we don't make them dark, right? So I need to chalk the edges of these things, and I have some leftover dust here. I can probably wet the edges of the paper, or just get a brush and wet that, and then just quickly touch up the edges. There we go. Now we can add a little glue. And put that on here too. Make sure it's right side up. Doesn't have to be square though. Not that. Please keep out. I have added some more signs to the walls. I'm ready to start assembling them. So if you remember the overlap that was created earlier, we talked about in the very first step, that's where now this wall is going to rest and hide this edge like that. So that's going to make a beautiful corner, right? So what I like to use is, this is I'm not sure if it's for engineering. I think it's more you find it in woodworking stores, usually with a set of other gauges of different widths, but it's perfectly square, works well, this kind of treatment. I'm going to set it down and line it up right against the edge of the cardboard, and then use that as a guide to make sure this wall is square. So I'm going to put some glue on there first. Line up the bottom edge down here, and fold it up into place. Now we know it's square. Once that dries, I will do the same thing with the other side, and then the front. And I finished assembling the walls, adding some detailed signs. It's all glued up, and now we're ready for the roof. So in the next segment, we will build the tar paper and batten roof so we can put it on the top of the shack.